At 63 years old, I felt something I thought was impossible. Something that invaded every fiber of my being, that made me question everything I believed about myself, about my marriage, about the life I had built. And when I say everything entered me, I'm talking about emotions I didn't know still existed inside this worn-out body, feelings that united with every broken part of my soul. My name is Margaret, and what I'm about to tell you destroyed my family, my reputation, and nearly destroyed me. It all started on a Tuesday morning in Charleston, a morning like any other after 38 years of marriage. My husband Richard was reading the newspaper at breakfast, the same ritual we'd maintained since 1987. Our 3 children had their own lives now. Michael in Boston with his family, Sarah in Atlanta climbing the corporate ladder, and Daniel, our youngest, still trying to find himself in Portland. The house felt empty, enormous, like a museum of memories that no longer breathed. Richard and I had become roommates who shared a bed but nothing else. We hadn't touched each other, really touched, in over 5 years. And honestly, I had made peace with that, or so I thought. That morning, Richard announced he was going to spend 3 weeks in Denver for a corporate conference. 3 weeks. I felt nothing. Not relief, not sadness, just nothing. And that nothingness was more terrifying than any emotion. When he left that Thursday, taking his suitcase and giving me a distracted kiss on the forehead, I stood at the door watching his car disappear down the tree-lined street of our neighborhood in Charleston, and I felt like I was disappearing too. If you're watching this and you've ever felt invisible in your own life, please hit that subscribe button. This story is for you, and you need to hear what happened next. The loneliness of that first weekend was suffocating. I tried to fill my days with the usual activities, my book club, volunteering at the community center, gardening, but everything felt mechanical, lifeless. On Sunday evening, while watering the roses in my backyard, my neighbor Caroline called me over the fence. She looked concerned, that look people give you when they see something you're trying to hide. "Margaret, honey, are you okay? You look lost." I wanted to say I was fine, but instead, tears I didn't know were there started rolling down my face. Caroline climbed over that fence, and for the first time in years, someone held me while I cried. Really held me. She invited me to her house for wine, and that's where she told me about the art class she attended every Tuesday night in downtown Charleston. "It changed my life," she said, her eyes sparkling. "You should come. No husbands, no responsibilities, just women creating and being free." I laughed at the word free. At 63, what did freedom even mean anymore? But something in her words planted a seed. The following Tuesday, I found myself walking into a converted warehouse that had been transformed into an art studio. The smell of paint and turpentine, the sound of music I didn't recognize, the buzz of conversation and laughter, it all felt foreign and exciting. There were about 15 women there, all different ages, and at the front of the room, setting up canvases and organizing brushes, was a man who made my heart stop. His name was Vincent. He was 47, and he looked at the world like it was a masterpiece waiting to be discovered. When his eyes met mine during introductions, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. I felt seen. Not as someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's volunteer, but as Margaret, just Margaret. And that feeling, that recognition, it entered every part of me that had been dormant. It united with the woman I used to be before I became everyone else's everything. The class that night was about painting emotions. Vincent walked around the room, looking at each person's canvas, offering gentle guidance. When he reached me staring at my blank canvas, he knelt beside my chair. "What are you afraid to feel?" he asked softly. The question broke something in me. My hands started moving, almost without my permission, creating dark swirls that turned into stormy seas. He didn't say anything else, just stayed there beside me, his presence warm and solid, while I painted years of suppressed feelings. At the end of class, he touched my shoulder lightly. "This is powerful, Margaret. You have something real here. Will you come back?" I nodded, unable to speak, and drove home with my heart pounding like I was a teenager again. If you're feeling this with me, if you understand this awakening, subscribe to this channel because what comes next will shock you. I started attending the class every Tuesday, and sometimes Thursday too when Vincent offered advanced sessions. Richard called from Denver occasionally, our conversations brief and surface level. "How are you?" "Fine." "House okay?" "Yes." "Okay, I have a dinner meeting." Click. Meanwhile, I was learning to see colors again, to feel textures, to express decades of silent screaming through paint and charcoal. Vincent and I began staying after class, talking about art, about life, about dreams we'd abandoned. He told me about his divorce 3 years ago, how his ex-wife said he loved art more than he loved her, and maybe she was right. He told me about growing up in New Orleans, about his daughter who was studying in Paris, about how he saw beauty in broken things, and I told him things I'd never told anyone, about feeling like a ghost in my own life, about the miscarriage I'd had between Sarah and Daniel that Richard never wanted to discuss, about the novel I started writing at 25 and abandoned because motherhood and marriage consumed everything, about feeling like I was dying slowly, imperceptibly, and no one noticed because I was dying quietly. One Thursday night, 2 months into my artistic awakening, everyone else had left, and Vincent and I were cleaning brushes in companionable silence. Rain was pouring outside, hammering against the warehouse's metal roof. "I don't want to go home," I said suddenly, surprising myself. He looked at me with those understanding eyes. "Then don't," he said simply. We sat on the paint-stained floor, backs against the wall, and talked until 3 in the morning. He told me I was brave. Me. Brave. Richard had never once used that word to describe me. And when Vincent reached over and held my hand, that simple touch sent electricity through my entire body. Every nerve ending woke up. Every suppressed desire surfaced. Every part of me that had been shut down roared back to life. I pulled my hand away, terrified. "I'm married," I whispered. "I know," he said. "I'm not asking you for anything, Margaret. I'm just here." But we both knew that wasn't true. The air between us was charged with something dangerous and intoxicating. I drove home that night shaking, my mind racing. What was I doing? I was a 63-year-old married woman with grandchildren, for God's sake. But when I looked in the mirror, I saw someone I hadn't seen in years. A woman with flushed cheeks, bright eyes, someone alive. The guilt came crashing in immediately after. Richard might not be affectionate anymore, but he was my husband. We had a history, a family, a life built together. But what kind of life was it, really? A life of routine and silence and slowly disappearing? I didn't sleep that night, and I've barely slept soundly since. If you're struggling with this moral complexity, if you're torn between duty and desire, hit that subscribe button and stay with me because this only gets more complicated. Richard came home from Denver 2 days later, and I could barely look at him. Every time he spoke to me in that absent way, every time he walked past me without really seeing me, I thought about Vincent. About how Vincent listened when I spoke, how he laughed at my jokes, how he looked at my paintings like they mattered, like I mattered. The contrast was unbearable. I kept going to the art classes, telling Richard I had found a hobby, which wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. He seemed pleased, actually, that I had something to occupy my time. "That's great, Maggie," he said, not looking up from his laptop. He was the only one who called me Maggie, and I used to love it, but now it felt like he was talking to someone who didn't exist anymore. Vincent and I didn't touch again for several weeks, but the tension grew with every class. We'd exchange glances that lasted too long. Our hands would brush when passing supplies. Once he tucked a strand of hair behind my ear while critiquing my work, and I gasped audibly. The other women in class noticed. Caroline pulled me aside one evening. "Be careful, honey," she warned. "I see how you two look at each other. I'm not judging, God knows I'm not. But be careful. People get hurt." I knew she was right, but I couldn't stop. For the first time in decades, I felt something other than numb. Then came the night of the gallery opening. Vincent had organized a small exhibition of student work at a local coffee shop, and 3 of my paintings were included. Richard said he'd come, but called at the last minute with an excuse about a conference call with Singapore. Of course, I went alone, wearing a dress I'd bought that afternoon, something that made me feel beautiful instead of invisible. The opening was modest but lovely, with wine and cheese and people actually discussing the art. When I stood in front of my painting, the stormy one from that first class, Vincent came up beside me. "This is where it all started," he said quietly. "You breaking open." I turned to look at him, and the desire in his eyes was unmistakable. "Vincent," I started, but he shook his head. "Come with me," he said, and led me to a small storage room behind the coffee shop. We stood there in the dim light among boxes of supplies, inches apart, breathing hard. "Tell me to stop," he said. "Tell me this is wrong and I'll step back and we'll pretend this never happened." But I couldn't say those words because I didn't want him to stop. I wanted to feel everything I'd been denied, everything I'd buried, everything I'd convinced myself I no longer needed. He kissed me then, and it wasn't gentle or cautious. It was desperate and hungry and full of all the longing we'd been suppressing. His hands were in my hair, mine clutching his shirt, and I felt like I was being consumed and reborn at the same time. Everything entered me in that moment: desire, guilt, fear, exhilaration, shame, joy, all of it united with every conflicted part of my being. When we finally pulled apart, both gasping, I was crying. "I can't do this," I said, even as every cell in my body screamed the opposite. "I know," he said, pressing his forehead against mine, "but you already are." And he was right. Whether we took it further or not, I had already crossed a line. I had already betrayed Richard emotionally, and that realization crushed me. I left the gallery without saying goodbye to anyone, drove home in a daze, and threw up in my bathroom from the sheer emotional overload. Are you still with me? Because this is where everything truly falls apart. Subscribe if you need to know what happens, because I promise you're not prepared. I stopped going to the art classes. I couldn't face Vincent, couldn't face myself, couldn't face what I'd done and what I wanted to do. I threw myself into being the perfect wife again, cooking Richard's favorite meals, organizing his closet, doing all the things that used to define me. But Richard noticed something was off. At dinner one night, he actually looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in years. "You seem different," he said. "Are you sick?" Sick. That's what he thought. Not happy, not troubled, not going through something, but sick. I almost laughed. "No, Richard, I'm not sick. I'm just trying to figure out who I am." He looked confused. "You're my wife. You're the kid's mother. What else is there to figure out?" And that sentence, that casual dismissal of my entire inner life, broke something that couldn't be repaired. Vincent started calling, texting. I ignored everything for 2 weeks. But then he showed up at my house one afternoon when Richard was at work. I saw his car from the window and my heart nearly exploded. I should have sent him away. I should have said this was inappropriate. But I invited him in instead. We sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd made thousands of meals for my family, and he said, "I'm not here to pressure you, Margaret. I'm here because I'm falling in love with you, and I needed you to know. I know you're married. I know you have a whole life, but I also know you felt what I felt in that room, and I can't pretend it didn't happen. I won't chase you if you tell me to go, but I won't pretend I don't see you, all of you, in a way I don't think anyone has in a very long time." He was right. God help me, he was right. We talked for hours. He held me while I cried about all my regrets, all my lost dreams, all the years I'd spent being everything for everyone except myself. And then he kissed me again. But this time it was tender, worshipful almost, like I was something precious. We moved to the couch and the kissing grew more intense. His hands explored my body, tentative at first, then bolder when I didn't stop him. I felt beautiful under his touch, desired in a way I'd forgotten was possible. We didn't cross the final line that day, but we came close. So close. And the guilt afterward was overwhelming. After he left, I sat on that couch for hours, trying to reconcile the woman who had just been in another man's arms with the woman who had taken wedding vows 38 years ago. Both were me. Both were real. And I didn't know how to be both. Richard announced the following week that he needed to return to Denver for another extended trip. 3 more weeks. Part of me was relieved. Part of me wondered if he actually had someone else too, if we'd both been living separate lives for years and just never acknowledged it. I didn't ask. That night after he left, Vincent came over. We both knew what was going to happen. I'd like to say I was conflicted, that I fought it. But the truth is, I wanted it. I wanted to feel alive again, to feel desired, to feel something other than invisible. What happened between us that night changed everything. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional, spiritual even. Every touch felt like reclamation. Every whispered word felt like absolution. He made me feel worshipped, cherished, seen in every way. And afterward, lying in my marriage bed with another man, I felt everything. Ecstasy and devastation, liberation and guilt, completeness and fragmentation. Everything entered and united with every part of me, the good and the bad, the brave and the cowardly, the faithful and the betrayer. I was all of it at once, and I didn't know if I could live with that truth. If you're still watching, if you're not judging me too harshly, please subscribe because I need you to understand where this goes. Vincent and I began an affair. There's no pretty way to say it. For 3 weeks while Richard was gone, Vincent would come to my house, or I'd go to his loft, and we'd exist in this bubble where consequences didn't exist. We'd paint together, make love, talk about building a different life. He wanted me to leave Richard, to choose happiness, to choose him. You deserve to be loved like this, he'd say. You deserve to be someone's priority, not an afterthought. And God, I wanted to believe that was possible. But the guilt was eating me alive. Every time my phone rang and it was Sarah or Michael or Daniel, I felt like a fraud. Every time I passed a photo of my wedding day, I felt sick. Every time I thought about what this would do to Richard, despite everything, I felt like a monster. Then Richard came home early, unannounced. He walked into our bedroom on a Tuesday afternoon, and I was there with fresh sheets on the bed, the same sheets I'd washed 3 times that week to erase Vincent's scent. Richard looked different. Tired, older, almost sad. "Maggie, we need to talk," he said, and my heart stopped. He knew. Somehow he knew. But what he said next shocked me more than any accusation could have. "I've been having an affair, for 2 years, with someone at work. It's over now. She ended it, and I came home because I realized I've been taking you for granted, and I want to try again. I want to save our marriage. I'm sorry." I stood there, frozen, as he cried. My husband of 38 years was confessing his affair, asking for forgiveness, and all I could think was, I don't know if I want to save this marriage. I don't know if there's anything left to save. But I didn't say that. I said I needed time to process, and he nodded, relieved, thinking my shock was about his betrayal. The irony was suffocating. We'd both betrayed each other. We'd both sought something elsewhere that we couldn't find at home. The difference was his affair was ending and mine was just beginning. Or maybe mine had been going on for years in the form of emotional neglect and mutual indifference. I didn't know anymore. I told Vincent about Richard's confession, and he saw it as a sign. A perfect opportunity for me to leave guilt-free. "He betrayed you first, Margaret. For 2 years. You don't owe him anything now." But it wasn't that simple. Richard's affair, as painful as it was to hear about, felt like it explained so much. His distance, his disinterest, his absence. And now he wanted to repair things. The man who had barely touched me in years wanted to try again. And I felt nothing. No anger, no relief. Just this vast emptiness where my marriage used to be. I told Richard I knew our marriage was broken long before his affair. I told him I felt invisible, unloved, unimportant. And for the first time in possibly ever, we had a real conversation. He admitted he'd checked out years ago, that he'd felt inadequate as a husband because I always seemed so capable and independent. "I didn't think you needed me," he said, "so I stopped trying." The absurdity of it was devastating. We'd both been so lonely, so isolated, but neither of us had the courage to say it out loud, so we'd just drifted into parallel lives. Now here we were, at 63 and 65, trying to figure out if there was anything left to rebuild. Richard wanted to go to counseling, to do whatever it took. And part of me, the part that valued commitment and history and family, wanted to try. But the other part, the part that had come alive with Vincent, couldn't imagine going back to that gray existence, even an improved version of it. I didn't see Vincent for 2 weeks while Richard and I tried to reconnect. We talked more than we had in years. We went on dates. He held my hand. He tried. And it was nice, in a familiar, comfortable way. But it wasn't passion. It wasn't that all-consuming feeling of being truly seen and desired. When Vincent finally called, desperate to see me, I agreed to meet him at a park in Mount Pleasant. The moment I saw him, I knew I was in trouble. Everything in me pulled toward him. We sat on a bench, not touching, and he said, "I love you, Margaret. I know it's complicated. I know it's messy. But I love you, and I think you love me too. Choose me. Choose happiness. Choose yourself for once." I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But how do you dismantle a life of 38 years? How do you tell your children their mother is leaving their father for a man 16 years younger? How do you reconcile wanting personal happiness with the destruction it would cause? Subscribe if you're invested in this now, because I need you to help me figure out what to do next. I'm living in 2 worlds right now, and I'm being torn apart. Richard found my art supplies last week, the canvases I'd hidden in the garage. He looked at them, really looked at them, and said, "These are beautiful. Maggie, I didn't know you could do this. I didn't know you wanted to do this." And I realized he didn't know so many things about me because I'd stopped sharing, and he'd stopped asking, and we'd both accepted this diminished version of partnership as normal. Is that worth saving? Can you rebuild something from such a broken foundation? Or is it kinder to both of us to admit the marriage died years ago and we just didn't bury it? Meanwhile, Vincent is losing patience. He wants an answer. He wants me to choose. And the truth is, when I'm with him, I do choose him. Every time. But when I'm home, looking at photos of my children, thinking about family holidays and grandchildren and the life I've built, I choose stability. I choose the known over the unknown. I choose not to be the villain in my own family story. But what about choosing myself? What about choosing the woman who feels alive, who creates art, who feels desired and cherished? Doesn't she deserve consideration too? I'm being pulled apart, piece by piece, and I don't know if there's enough of me left to satisfy anyone, including myself. Last night, Richard and I made love for the first time in over 5 years. It was tender and careful, and he whispered, "I love you," afterward. I cried, but not for the reasons he thought. I cried because I didn't feel what I thought I should feel. I cried because I kept thinking about Vincent. I cried because I'm 63 years old and I've discovered I'm capable of passion and betrayal and selfishness and courage all at once, and I don't know what to do with that knowledge. Richard held me while I cried, thinking he was helping me heal from his betrayal, not knowing I was mourning a love he doesn't even know exists. The deception is killing me. The duplicity is eating me alive. But the thought of giving up either of them feels impossible. This morning, I got a text from Vincent, just 3 words. "Choose me, Margaret." And then my phone rang, and it was Sarah calling to tell me she's pregnant with her 2nd child. "I'm so glad you and Dad are solid," she said. "I want my kids to see what a lasting marriage looks like." I felt like I couldn't breathe. What do I do? Do I stay with Richard and honor my vows, even though they've been broken by both of us? Do I try to rebuild something authentic from the ruins of our marriage? Or do I choose Vincent and the possibility of real passion, real connection, even if it means becoming the woman who destroyed her family? Do I choose myself and live with being called selfish? Or do I choose duty and live with the slow death of my spirit? Here's what I know at 63 years old, after everything that's entered me and united with every part of my being. I know what it feels like to be truly alive again. I know what it feels like to be desired, seen, cherished. I know what it feels like to create something meaningful. But I also know what it costs. I know about guilt that doesn't sleep. I know about the weight of betrayal. I know about the complexity of love, how it's not just one thing but many contradictory things at once. I know that choosing happiness for yourself sometimes means devastating others. And I know that at the end of the day, I'm the only one who can decide what my life means, what my remaining years should look like. Whether security or passion matters more, whether history or possibility should win. Richard doesn't know about Vincent. Vincent is waiting for my decision. My children think their parents are healing. And I'm standing at this impossible crossroads trying to figure out which direction leads to a life I can actually live with. So here's what I need from you. Whoever's watching this, whoever made it this far into my confession, what would you do? If you were 63 and had just discovered what it feels like to be truly alive after decades of feeling invisible, would you choose the safe path or the passionate one? Would you honor vows that have already been broken? Or would you pursue genuine connection even if it cost you everything? Would you stay for your children, your grandchildren, your reputation? Or would you leave for yourself, for your art, for love that makes you feel seen? I don't have an ending for you because I'm living this right now. Tomorrow, Vincent wants an answer. Richard wants to book a couple's vacation to rekindle our romance. And I'm sitting here, 63 years old, feeling like a teenager and an old woman simultaneously, trying to decide which version of myself deserves to exist. The dutiful wife, the passionate artist, the betrayer, the woman who was betrayed. I'm all of them, and I'm none of them. And I don't know which one gets to make this choice. Please tell me in the comments what you would do. Subscribe and hit that notification bell because I'll need to update you when I finally decide. This is my real story, and it's not over. It might never be over. But at least now, someone knows. At least now, I'm not invisible anymore. Even if that visibility comes with shame, at least it comes with truth. What do I do? What would you do? I'm begging you, help me figure out which path leads to something I can live with, because right now, every option feels like both salvation and destruction, and I'm terrified of choosing wrong. Or maybe I'm more terrified that there is no right choice, just different versions of loss and gain, and I'll have to live with whatever I choose for the rest of my life. So tell me, what would you do in my place?